Hello there. It is a new week, and the show today would be incomplete without a look at headlines on Business AM, Nigeria's fastest growing financial and business newspaper. Welcome to News Express on Africa Business Radio. I am Rachel Chijindu, and we're looking at the top headlines now. Top in the front page on Business AM for this morning. A Higbeti Summit. Lagos promises economic reforms following summit recommendations. You might want to check out this one to find out what went down during the Higbeti Summit over last week. Nigeria posts world's best GDP growth ahead US, China, Japan. Beating analyst expectations. We have the GDP grew by 9.7% quarter on quarter to 19.55 trillion naira in real terms. That's the best in 8 years. And just another bullet headline there. Major growth recorded in non-oil sector with agriculture, industries, services growing at 27%, 19% and 54% respectively. Catch that one on the front page. Over to the summary section. We have other really catchy headlines here on Business AM. IMF sees pressure on central banks. IMF sees pressure on central banks. That one's on page 4 of the paper. The finance and investment segment has this one. Sentiment dominate fixed income. NNPC refinery repairs on course. Insurance and business now. Business insurance for next storm. Catch this one on pages 11, 24 and 14 of Business AM. Of course, as usual, I've got Philip Isakba, the publisher of Business AM, to join me for conversations this morning. Hello, Mr. Philip. Good morning. It's good to have you on the show.
Good morning, Rachel.
Good to have you. All right, let's get into the conversation now. Of course, I'd like to start with the very first headline on the front page this morning, talking about the GDP numbers. We are seeing a 9.7% increase there, of course, ahead of what we see in the US and China and in Japan. Please help us make sense of this data.
I know this would have come as a surprise, to many people who probably pick up the newspaper today, and they will come. I mean, they will have seen that when the numbers were released on Friday, that there was a 0.11% quarter growth.
True.
That got Nigeria out of the recession, so to speak. But we had to dig into this. We had followed this the release of the GDP numbers since December, and we've talked to a lot of analysts who were very pessimistic, especially going into December and when inflation was yo-yoing all over the place. And analysts had said that they do not expect. Recall, Rachel, that the Minister of Finance did say that she thought that Nigeria should be out of the recession by this first quarter. This first quarter of 2021, and people were saying that wouldn't happen. And we found that the growth quarter on quarter, from negative to what was recorded, was actually 9.7% growth quarter on quarter. And if you look at this across the world, matching what you have in the United States, United States did just 4%. China did 2.6%. Japan 3%, and Colombia did 6%. So you find that we're talking about growth here. We're talking about improvement, from where you were. So in terms of this improvement, this really is good, especially for Nigeria. For the best in the last 8 years. Look at growth in terms of the size of the GDP. From that quarter when we had the negative growth, to the fourth quarter when we had this 0.11% growth, and we find that the GDP, the size of the GDP or the size of the economy has moved from 19.55 trillion in real terms. So that's positive. I guess it will be something to build on, by the authorities, and to really find the magic that brought this about, and then work on that to see what happens.
Right.
I will tell you, throw in a caveat though, that we have spoken to some analysts who are still waiting for what the first quarter, looking at what the January numbers, the January, February, maybe March numbers, who are thinking that there might have been a push in December. In December, the festivities, there was a lot of activities, in terms of the lockdown was eased and festivities the Christmas period tends to ramp up activities, and they are saying that maybe, just maybe, that also contributed to it, people had to produce more, to meet demand, and so on and so forth. So they are saying, let's wait a little while, wait for quarter one numbers, Q1 numbers in 2021, and see what that provides. Is it possible that the numbers could be slow?
Yeah.
Growth could be slow, that it will make what we've seen meaningless. But I believe that a lot is happening at the moment. Activities are picking up. The vaccines distribution going all over the world, especially in the US, in Europe, United Kingdom in particular, is sending positive signals. I think that there seems to be some calmness. The nerves are calm, because of vaccines distribution. Although we haven't had some coming here, but a lot depends on what goes on in the international economy. The global marketplace, and if there is some calm happening globally, it tends to affect the economy, Nigeria's economy, positively. We've seen what's going on in terms of oil prices. Oil prices are beginning to pick up, even though it's a wait and see situation, but we have oil prices rising well above the benchmark, budget benchmark for crude, this year, and that's positive, and we hope that it will continue throughout. For much longer.
Right. Now, for some persons, these numbers are quite magical, Of course, you mentioned that the output growth of 0.11% in the fourth quarter, we saw that one. And we saw that the agri sector grew by 3.42%, which is quite impressive. But looking at the security challenges that we have, which is causing this galloping inflation in food prices, which is at almost 21% at this point, one would wonder how the growth actually came about.
Well, 0.1% isn't particularly fantastic, but I have said that the festivities, December, perhaps November going to December, but much more to do with December. The activities, activities were heightened, because of the buying and selling that was taking place. A lot of that was taking place. And if that was happening, then there's the tendency that the entire economy would have been, I wouldn't say bubbling, but will have been active to such a level, to produce this 0.11% growth. Agriculture, you still have some pockets of places where, food production has to continue, even though you have the security challenges. Security challenges in terms of movement of goods from one place to the other, the core areas of food production, of course, you have the Middle Belt region that seem to have these clashes every now and then, but if you look at the fourth quarter, there wasn't really so much, especially the food belt area, where you had these skirmishes. You had more in the southern parts. You had some, of course, some of these things happening in some of northern areas. But I want to believe that food production was still going on, and this has been responsible for what we have seen.
Right. Okay, let's move our conversation now to the Ehingbeti Summit that took place yesterday, and we're aware that there were key promises, economic reforms following that summit and recommendations that were made. Can you take us through that briefly, please?
Okay, Lagos again, like we said was it last week? It remains the economic and commercial nerve center of the country, and it continues to reinvent itself. You will wish that there will be the kind of focus on economy that Lagos State does. So at the end of the summit, a number of recommendations were made, and it's been taken on, by the government. Again, it's about government and private sector engagement, constantly engaging, and the government listening to the private sector. They have made a number of recommendations which they are taking on board. Especially, of course, they talked about security to ensure that the economy of Lagos is moving accordingly. But it's more to do with wanting the economy to come in line with 21st century realities. So technology is key, for this reality to take place. Again, the subject was a greater Lagos, for the future, for the next decade, So technology is key. Education is key. I think that the private sector did recommend that there must be an alignment of education priorities. The good thing was that the deputy governor was there, during the closing ceremony, and then immediately began to take on the recommendations and began to speak to those recommendations and to say that, yes, Lagos State will take this on board. Of course, they're going to do some review, in-house review. The government will review these recommendations and then before they begin to implement. But these reforms are important. They are necessary for the states to move ahead. Right.
We'll stay positive and hope that they actually do implement all of these recommendations during that summit. And just before I let you go, Mr. Philip, any other headline in particular readers should turn their attention to?
Well, there's a lot that to look at, in this publication. Of course, there's an interview with Bill Gates in the paper, talking about. Of course, he's written a new book and talking about what's it called, global warming. But there is something to do with the markets. Of course, we talked about lukewarm sentiment dominating fixed income markets. Naira plunging last week. That's something that the readers should look forward to. There's something about something happening in Owerri. Some businessmen and some Chinese investors looking to build what they call an industrial resort in Imo State. Of course, it's something to take a lot of people away from the current development that is taking place there regarding the former governor and the current governor. It shows promise. But there's also something about business insurance. We've been focusing on insurance differently from what a lot of people have been doing. Now you recall that there was some significant disruption during the EndSARS to some businesses, across the country, especially in Lagos. I think we've heard about some business insurance companies having to take on some losses as a result of payouts to some businesses. But we also found that there are a lot, that there are so many of them who are not taking seriously the aspect of business insurance. And we have looked at this and we are asking if businesses are ready for the next storm. So that's something for them to look forward to. course, there's the other one. There's an interview with a CEO of InvestData. InvestData, it's a number crunching and analytical company. That speaks to market development and looks ahead to the entire gamut of 2021 and see what investors can, how investors should look at the market and how they should position themselves for what is to come this year.
Right. All right, thank you so much, Mr. Philip Isapa. We'll draw the curtain at this point. Of course, we'll get back to you on Friday for how all of these headlines develops within the course of the week. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Rachel. Have a great day.
You too. And that was Philip Isapa, the publisher, Business AM, Nigeria's fastest growing financial and business newspaper.